Hi everyone and welcome to the Larp Guide. In this video I'll be sharing with you my opinions on how to play a bad guy at your LARP. If you enjoy this video then please consider becoming a subscriber, and if you have any of your own tips on playing a bad guy for the community, please pop them in the comments below. Being a bad guy at a LARP means that you're actively looking to cause another player's character hardship and loss. For example, in-game stealing of another player's resources or equipment is considered a bad guy move. You are doing something that you know will have a negative effect on another player's character. It's the key to what it means to play a bad guy. Playing a bad guy can lead you to be the focus of another player's emotions due to the actions that you have carried out. These emotions can often bleed over into out of character and can get personal if the injured party feels that you have cheated or that you're actively seeking to ruin their game and fun. The focus of this video will be how to play that big bad guy, but at the same time get people to love you as it. Because let's face it, there are some bad guys that everybody loves for some unknown reason. Take Spike from Buffy. He was supposed to be a 5-episode throwaway bad guy, but the fans loved him. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs and get bogged down with why, but as a bad guy he ended up staying around for not just an entire series of Buffy, but also then crossed over into Angel. He is a great example of being a bad guy, but at the same time being loved for it. So with all this in mind, here is my guide on how to be an awesome, memorable and loved bad guy at your LARP event. First step, let's look at balance. Balance is key when designing your character. Every time you're thinking about doing something that will have a negative effect on another player's game, think about something that you can do that will have a positive effect. For example, stealing an item from another player will have a negative effect on their game. But by then leaving in its place a calling card with a secret code will give that player some mystery to solve. It could lead them to meeting up and role-playing with somebody else who's also found one of your calling cards. Plus maybe you could have a code that could be cracked by combining the bottom of the two cards together, revealing your hidden stash location in which their items can be found. What you are now creating with your negative action is actually positive gain for someone else. This is what I mean by balance. For everything you are taking away from someone, try and replace it with something else. There is nothing worse than returning to your tent and finding a weapon that you spent years and loads of in-game resources on missing. The sense of loss and upset as you stare at that empty spot that only 10 minutes ago filled you with joy is something that can ruin a player's experience and often leaves them feeling cheated. But if you had left something for them to action in its place, that player is now filled with a sense of purpose. I am going to seek out and catch this damn thief, and if I have this clue to get me started, at least it's something. It's also worth pointing out that sometimes you may not be able to give back to the player you've affected with your action. It could be there is only one of something, and you now have it knowing that they wanted it. Just think balance. What can you give back to the game in return? Maybe bring on board and work with the player that you stole that position from. Or you could even be so inept in the position that it gives that other player the role play to kind of, talk to others in bringing you down. Okay, so now we have a sense of balance as a bad guy. When we take something, we try to give something back. Now let's look at making you vulnerable. There is nothing worse than encountering an overwhelming force at a LARP event that just keeps on taking from you and there's no way of beating or stopping it. The bad guy who has all the items and experience going up against a fresh-faced new character is that kind of David and Goliath fight that the new player will feel they have no chance in winning. But when they actually realise they have no chance at all of winning and that person just keeps on taking from them, the result is often the player will leave the system or worse, quit LARPing altogether. So the key to be an amazing bad guy, just like in a computer game, is to have some weak spots. It could be that you leave your stash of stolen items someplace in the field and then drop some kind of crude map to where that location is in the bar on the first night. It could be that you let slip that you're scared of something or that you value something very highly, giving someone a social option to win an encounter with you. It could be that when you are fighting, you always give a roar after hitting someone, leaving yourself exposed for a counterattack. I once made a character that had a very controversial past, that if it ever became public knowledge would destroy the character's reputation and political standing. This information was then given to the ref team to let slip into another player's hands at a time and date that I had no knowledge about. It ended up in the hands of a new character that completely destroyed me, and we both loved it. I had great fun trying to damage control the situation, and they had a blast being protected by my political rivals and being brought into the game and the system with a massive bang. In a nutshell, don't make yourself untouchable. Don't hide your stash of stolen goods in an outer character tent. Maybe consider hiding them someplace in the field, or if the event is taking place in a building, maybe like some cupboard or something somewhere. I mean, how amazing would it be when you come back to your stash and a group of players have set up an ambush for you, but you quickly spin a story of how you've been set up, that this was a meeting place to negotiate the return of your daughter, or something like that. The players are getting back their items and you're surviving the encounter. But you're making an amazing Larp story for everybody that's involved. Granted, they never caught the bad guy and got their justice, but that was never the point. You're there to have as much fun as they are. What you have given these other players is hours of game from what could have been just a negative thing. Being the bad guy is not about winning. It's about having fun. Being vulnerable gives you opportunities to roleplay and have fun with other players. Okay, next up, don't cheat. It's so important that players follow the rules, and even more so if you're having a negative impact on somebody else's game. I can't stress how important it is that you, as the bad guy, follows the rules and knows all the rules for the things you're doing. I once attended an event where stealing required you to physically take an item to the ref team, who would then remove the lammy from the item, and then they would keep the physical item and you would then get the lammy, to which you were then required to attach to a physical item you owned. A lammy was a piece of laminated paper that identified what the item was, its worth, and what it did. The player, after realising that the item had been stolen, could then go to the ref team and retrieve their physical item minus the lammy. There was nothing worse than finding your item still in its place and the lammy snipped off. As you know 100% that that player had cheated. It ruined your game, as the refs could do nothing to replace the lammy, as it would unbalance the system to do so. It just sucked. It just made everyone angry, and it was all because this player just cheated. So it's very important that if you're going to have a negative impact on somebody else's game, that you follow the rules. Also, by cheating at a LARP, it's a very quick way to get yourself banned. So just don't do it. Okay, next up. Remember, your character is a bad guy, but you're not. If you ever have a chance to say sorry out of character, take it. What you have done in character is perfectly fine, and being a bad guy means that sometimes you may kill somebody else's character that of course they've invested years of time, money and love into, and they may not be ready for that character's story to be over. The player may be emotional at the loss, And so you as a player, not as your character, reaching out and saying sorry can have such a massive positive impact. It is something that is often very hard to do. No one wants to upset someone, and being the cause of that upset is something that, as a bad guy, it's very hard to handle. My advice is to take a breath, say sorry, and if you feel it's the right time, let them know how awesome their character was. I don't often play PvP killer bad guy, as I find it's very hard. It's easy as a non-player character to detach yourself from the impacts of your actions as you're being told what to do and given a character to play. But when you're 100% behind the driving seat, then you feel 100% responsible for what you have done, and it's hard. I have killed player characters in large battles as a monster and have shamefully, looking back, gloated about how many I killed. I did go over to them after and offer to give them a hand and take their stuff back to their tent and say what a good fight it was. But I never paid them a second thought after that. But when I killed a player character as my vampire player character, I felt so guilty and I hated every minute of it. You are playing a bad guy. It doesn't make you a bad person, and it's important to remember that. I have seen over the years some incredibly horrible and dangerous behaviours being directed at a player who is just playing a bad guy character. On one occasion, I saw that player being punched in the face and wrestled to the ground. This is an extreme case of people getting so wrapped up in their character that they forget that there's actually a real person playing that thing in front of them. Think about Game of Thrones, Joffrey. I mean, I hated that character. He made me mad. But the actor who was playing Joffrey is nothing like him. But there are actually people out there that hate the actor based off the character they were playing. To me, this is a testament to how good the actor is, but also an example of how sometimes this can happen at a LARP. So, my advice is to always make it clear when you are playing your bad guy and when you are you. I feel an accent can be a massive help in doing this. It's very clear cue that what you are doing and saying is your character and not you. Plus, always take that time to say sorry. Okay, the last thing to factor in when making your amazing bad guy is to have fun. It's so easy to get yourself wrapped up in the game and made to feel like you, the player, are a bad person. You're a player who is there to have fun and make your own stories. You are not there to be somebody else's punching bag. You're not there to be abused. If what you are doing is no longer fun, then retire the character and try something new. You don't owe anyone anything. Make your character fun to play and also fun to play against. Think about how you will have an impact on the game and if you will enjoy the impact that you're planning on making. If you won't, then just don't. Not all bad guys have to be killers or thieves, or some can just be selfish and manipulate events to suit their needs. The trick is to have fun and make some fun for others, and you will be well on your way to being a well-loved bad guy. Okay, so now when you're thinking about creating your bad guy, think about the following. Having a balanced impact on the game. Being vulnerable. Don't cheat. Remember, it's your character and not you, and most importantly, it's fun for you and for everyone else. Okay, before I get into my perfect example of someone being on the receiving end of a bad guy and loving it, if you've enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. This channel's growth and impact on the community is 100% in your hands. Okay, the story. I was attending one of my first ever LARP events in a system called Curious Pastimes. I was a member of the Arcane Tempest within the Lion faction. And, you know, it was a great system. It was very enjoyable. There was lots of combat. But me and my friends that were there, we were enjoying ourselves. And one of the evenings, it was pointed out to us that you could, in character, go and have a meal at a group called the Agabushba. Now, what the meal was a curry. You turned up, you paid some in-character currency, and you got to sit down and were served an amazing curry. And I'm not joking, it was gorgeous. You sit on this long table. There was members of our group, but there was also members from other groups, from other factions that were there as well. And all of the food was being served up by these jovial, you know, gentlemen and ladies that were dressed up like kind of chefs in a way. And, you know, the evening went on. We were having some drinks, having a great time, enjoying the food. And then eventually we decided, okay, we're going to move on now to the tavern and end our evening there. Now, before we left, one of the members of our group was engaged in a conversation at the end of the table with some other people from other groups. And when we said we were going to leave, they went, do you know what? I want to stay. So we said, okay, mate, catch you later. Enjoy yourselves. We're going to be at the tavern. And so we left. We went to the tavern, had a good night. You know, time out was cool. Went back to our tents, etc., etc. Woke up the next morning, getting ourselves ready in our camp, and our friend's not there. So we just think he slept in, probably hangover or something. So we go to his out of character tent to kind of wake him up and say, mate, look, we've got a battle to get involved in. And he said, you know, he was there, he was fine, he was dressed, but he wasn't dressed in our kind of unit colours. You know what I mean? He was kind of dressed in his civvies at the time. So we're like, what's going on? Are you going home or something? He's like, no, it's fine. He goes, no, I won't be coming back to the unit this event. Have fun, guys, and I'll catch up with you on the, you know, when we go to pack up everything. And we were like, okay, right. He gave the cue to let us know that his character had been killed, but he was definitely hinting he didn't want to tell us why or where or anything like that. There's something about this kind of in character and out of character bleed that can take place where you kind of divulge information or take things that your character knows in character into out of character, which is a bad thing. And he was trying to prevent that from happening. So we all went, understood, mate. We went back to the game, and of course, after a while, we were role-playing the fact that our companion hadn't arrived in camp. So, you know, unfortunately, when I say unfortunately, it was good fun, but we went after a big battle. When we came back, we started to look and try to gather information of where our colleague was. The last time we saw him was at the Agabushba. So, of course, their unit only opened their kind of the curry house late in the evening, and we couldn't find them anywhere else. So we waited until late in the evening. We went back to the Agabushba, and we had a surprise. So basically, we were there kind of interrogating the host to say, where did our colleague go? Did you see him leave? Who did he leave with? And then coming from behind their tent and walking directly in front of us was our friend dressed in their unit colours, carrying a big bowl of curry into the back of the tent, where he was then serving it to a load of guests they had sat around a table, just like we had been the night before. He gave us a wink and a smile. We kind of got the hint, and then we ceased our conversation with them, and then started to try and look for him elsewhere, as they at that point had told us, oh yeah, we saw him leave with, and they gave us a description of one of the other people that was at the table, and they said they headed in a random direction kind of thing. So of course, roleplay wise, off we all went, and yeah, so come the end of the event, we were like, dude, what was going on? What happened? And I haven't said this story for a long time, just in case the Agabushba was still in effect. But the story we were told, and this is why it was an amazing bad guy. These guys were They literally changed the way I viewed LARP and bad guys at LARP forever. So this is what Sam, sorry, I shouldn't say the name. This is what his point of view was. Basically, when we left, the people that ran the Agabush bar all produced knives and they killed all the people that had remained. Now, they did it all legitimately with the correct calls, and there was nothing any of those individuals could do because they didn't have weapons on them at the time, and so they all died. Now, after this had happened, they then explained what happened next. So basically, they were then all sacrificed to the Agabush bar gods. And this sacrifice involved their flesh being eaten. So in a nutshell, what we had consumed that night was the people before. And what the people sat around that table when our colleague came out carrying that tub of curry was actually his character's, flesh. They were eating him. And that was the concept behind the group, that basically that some of the guests that attended the meal would be killed and then served to the guests the next night. Now, of course, this is all in character. There was no real flesh being eaten and etc. like that. But it was a very, amusing and different kind of take on what happened to his character after he died. Now, that would have been a typical bad guy at a game. You're dead, this is what happens to you, ha, sorry about that, and off you go. Not these guys. These guys then presented my friend with basically a costume and said, if you want, please come and join us tomorrow. We'll feed you, we've got loads of drink, come and play in our unit, and then, come and role play with us the next night, being one of us, kind of serving it up, and then that kind of, the execution of the next guest. And they gave him that option to basically kind of become part of it, if you see what I mean, become part of that kind of bad guy-ish structure. And he loved it. And all the guys that had been killed that night before were also there, also in that new costume, and having a laugh, and behind the scenes seeing what the guys were doing behind the scenes as well. So experiencing the ritual as it was being taken place. Before they were sacrificed, they did a whole ritual that we could have, if we were paying attention, may have heard, but we were too busy eating curry and having a laugh. So it was brilliant. He got to experience that, and I hand on heart say that the Agabush bar are one of the best bad guy units that I've encountered. I mean, granted, there was like the squeaky bugs that were at Maelstrom that also did something kind of similar, but these guys absolutely hand on heart brilliant. They gave my friend an amazing story. They put smiles on all our faces, and hopefully these guys are still doing that kind of bad guy stuff in other systems, or still at Curious Pastimes. So anyway, that's my story of an amazing bad guy. So that wraps things up. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. Thank you for joining me. I love you all, and goodbye.